Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're diving into some huge news on the climate front. India has just rolled out a really significant new set of climate goals, and it signals a major step up in its ambition. So what's this all about? Let's get into it.
Okay, it all kicks off with this one number, 60%. It's a big one, super ambitious, and it's really the headline of India's new plan. But what exactly does it stand for?
Well, here it is. By 2035, India is aiming for a power grid where a huge majority, we're talking the lion's share, of its installed capacity comes from clean sources. You know, things like solar, wind, hydro, and nuclear. And that right there is a massive leap from where their goals used to be.
Okay, but that 60%, that's really just the tip of the iceberg. To get the full picture, we've got to break down all the targets India has laid out. All right, first, a little bit of jargon busting. These pledges are officially part of something called a Nationally Determined Contribution, or NDC for short. The easiest way to think of it is as a country's formal climate action plan that it submits under the Paris Agreement, showing the world exactly how it's going to fight climate change.
So this table here really puts it all into perspective. You can literally see the ambition level just jumping up in every single category. The goal for non-fossil fuel capacity shoots up from 50% by 2030 to 60% by 2035. The target for cutting emissions intensity gets tougher, and that goal for its carbon sink, which we'll get to in a sec, that's also getting a serious boost.
All right, so that second target you saw, emissions intensity. What in the world is that? Well, basically, it's all about decoupling economic growth from pollution. India is pledging to get way more efficient, so as its economy grows, its emissions don't shoot up at the same crazy pace. The new target is a 47% cut from 2005 levels.
And then there's that third big goal, creating a larger carbon sink. It's like nature's own CO2 vacuum cleaner. The plan is to expand India's forests and tree cover, which will literally pull more carbon dioxide right out of the air. The new goal is a sink big enough to absorb 3.5 to 4 billion tons of CO2.
So these new goals, yeah, they're super ambitious, no doubt. But that begs a really important question, right? How is India actually doing on the goals it already has? Let's check out the report card.
And wow, this is a pretty big deal. You can see here, India's 2030 goal was to get 50% of its installed power capacity from non-fossil sources. Well, they've already blown past that, hitting 52%. That's years ahead of schedule. Pretty impressive.
But, and this is a really important but, there's a huge difference between capacity, which is the potential to make power, and generation, which is the power we actually use. So even though more than half of India's capacity is clean, those sources are only generating about a quarter of the electricity people are actually using. It really shows you the challenge with renewables. You know, the sun isn't always out and the wind isn't always blowing.
So what about those other goals we mentioned?
Well, the progress there is pretty solid too. By 2019, India had already cut its emissions intensity by 36% and it built up a carbon sink of almost 2 billion tons. So, yeah, steady progress all around.
All right, so it's clear India is making some serious moves, but none of this is happening in a bubble, right? To really grasp why this is so important, we have to zoom out and see what's happening on the world stage.
And you know, this is where things get a bit more serious. The first ever global stocktake, which is basically a planetary report card on climate action, came back with a pretty grim conclusion. As a world, we are way off track from limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius.
This timeline here does a great job of putting India's announcement into context. The Paris Agreement in 2015 kicked things off, the global stocktake gave us that huge wake-up call, and now every country has this 2025 deadline to submit new, stronger plans. So India, they're basically just getting ahead of the curve.
So when you put it all together, what does this actually mean? What kind of message is India sending to the world by stepping up right now? Are we looking at a new form of climate leadership here?
And according to the experts, the timing is everything. I mean, check out this quote from Vaibhav Chaturvedi. The point is, India is moving forward at a time when it looks like some richer, developed countries are kind of hitting the brakes, or even rolling back their own climate policies. And that idea is echoed right here. Avantika Goswami from the Center for Science and Environment sees this as a clear signal, a sign that leadership on climate from the global south isn't just talk, it's concrete and real. It's about action. And that, of course, brings us to the big, final question. In a world that's already behind on its climate promises, India just raised the bar, big time. So the question is, will the rest of the world follow, especially the world's biggest historical emitters? And honestly, the answer to that might just decide all of our futures.